Hey guys, Gijoe here. Welcome back to my bunker here in Atlanta, Georgia. And we are continuing our BBR series here. This is episode 8, which is dealing with Sire Blood's card deck, his rule deck right here that you can get on makingplayingcards.com. We started this little portion of the series on episode 6, where we talked about the entire deck. Episode 7, we started talking about some of the specific cards that are very, very different from out of box. I think episode 7 dealt with air transports, and this is episode 8. We're going to be dealing with railway, and we'll probably tag on bombing raids onto the end of this just to let you see how these two kind of play together a little bit, or can if you want them to. So, all right, so let's talk about railway. So, railway on this card right here, it says that there is an automatic integrated railway in both minor and major industrial complexes. Okay? Now, the range is you can move any of these units from either of these complexes for a total of 3 spaces. So whether it's infantry, artillery, tank, any type of land unit can rail from a minor or a major complex for a total of 3 spaces. So let's look at how this is going to work. Now, something to keep in mind is the rail is only a non-combat move, okay? And it is restricted to the IPC value of the territory, right? So let's look at our scenario right here. So this is, I have kind of a tentative after China round 1, let's say that we are, Japan has taken Yunnan, China has taken it back. So let's look at rail. Now, if you look at India right here is worth 3 points, or 3 IPCs. So here is a situation now where the UK might make a decision on whether or not it's worth reinforcing Yunnan to keep Yunnan from falling to the Japanese and breaking the Burma Road. So typically, one thing you could do is obviously you could move up 2 infantry from here. You could move up a fighter from there. You could move up this fighter from there, and you could move up this. However, with the use of the rail, okay, since this says that you can move 3 territories or 3 spaces, okay, any of these units. So now the UK has 6 infantry and 3 artillery. So now they have a couple options. If they wanted to, they could move all 3 of these artillery, AAAs, forgive me. They could go 1, 2. So now UK now has all of this stuff in here, plus 3 AAAs, which could come in handy if Japan has this huge air force getting ready to come in, right? Something else you could do is if, any combination of that. If you wanted to move 1 AAA and 2 more infantry in there, okay, you could rail those in because that's 1, 2. That's 2 spaces away. So that's one way to use the rail. You don't have to send all of your railed units to the same territory, and nor do you have to send them 3 spaces. So for instance, if I wanted to, I could send 1 infantry, 1, 2. Let's say that UK owned this. Let's say that UK owned this at the beginning of their turn. Or no, maybe down here to Malaya. How about that? They already own that. They could go 1, 2, 3. Then they could send this infantry 1, 2. And they could send this AAA 1, 2. So you don't have to send all of your units that you're railing to the same location. If you wanted to, you could send this AAA this way, right? But you can only move 3 units since India is worth 3. Now, if India was worth 5, you'd be able to move 5 units, okay? So that's how the rail works, and it's only a non-combat move. And you cannot rail into a territory that you just took. So let's say, for instance, right here, move all this stuff back. Let's say, for instance, that that UK came in here, let's say that these guys were sitting there, and UK stepped into Siam and they took Siam. All right? On this turn. Well, they can't turn around and rail 3 more guys into there. Why? Because this was not theirs at the beginning of their turn. This is a non-combat move. All right? So that's something to keep in mind. You cannot rail into a newly captured territory. Now let's see if there's anything else here on the card. Sorry. Railway. It's the wrong card. All right. See, a territory valued at 3 may only transport 3 units. Okay. Now something else to think about on the railway. Let's look over here involving UK. Typically, you might see an industrial complex dropped in Iran here, or Persia if you have the out-of-box map. And let's say if UK has 2 infantry sitting here, Iran rather, is worth 2 IPCs, which means they can rail 2 units up to 3 spaces. So, however, there's an exception to this rule in that you cannot rail across a strait, okay, or a canal. So normally, these guys can go 3 spaces. So they could go 1, 2, and 3. So I could get reinforcements to India. Or I could go 1, I could go 2, but I cannot rail into Egypt because this is a canal. And the railroad does not go across canals or straits. So this is one example where your max movement would then be 2 as opposed to 3 because of that canal, okay? So it would actually take 2 turns to get reinforcements to Cairo if you're coming from the Middle East, even with rail. And you can't, and same thing if you're going the opposite way. Let's say you had a complex here in Egypt and you're trying to get pieces over here to the Middle East. You would have to, you can't rail. You would step here, right? That's 1 because you're stepping across a canal. But now you're away from your complex. So now you can't rail. So now it'll be 1, and the next turn, 1, next turn, 1, that kind of thing. So just keep that in mind. You cannot rail across a canal or a strait. Okay, so that is the how the railway works. Now that comes into play majorly with Germany, because you've got Germany has an industrial complex in Western Germany and Germany. And so it's worth 5 and 5. So Germany can essentially rail 10 units, 5 coming from Western Germany and 5 coming from Germany. That's huge. So rail can really help Germany getting in position for a Barbarossa attack, as well as rail can help the Soviet Union rail units up to the front to get more units up to the front to help thwart any type of German invasion. So now let's talk about the bombing raid. Now the bombing raid is essentially the same as out of box, okay? The one exception is the max damage is different in BBR. It's a little bit higher, okay? So I think you see with a heavy bomber, you can get on a max damage of 35 on a major industrial complex and 15 on a minor. That's with heavy bombers. With just normal strategic bombers, okay, even without technology, you can put 25 points of damage on a major industrial complex and 10 on a minor, all right? Now, everything else is pretty much the same for bombing raids as out of box. There's one thing, though, if we go back over to railway, and that is right here. Any damage to the industrial complex is considered damage to the railway, thus rendering the railway inoperative. So watch this. In this scenario, let's say that Japan is anticipating that the UK might consider railing into Yunnan to help defend Yunnan. So at this point, Japan might say, you know what? I got to have Yunnan. I don't want to have to fight all of these units in there as well. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a bombing raid over India. I know, there's they can scramble, they can escort, blah, 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 or intercept. Let's say for the sake of this example, let's say that the bombers were able to do a successful bombing raid on this complex. Let's say, well, let's do this. let's roll. How about that? I've got 2 bombers. I'm going to roll 2 dice. Okay, I got a 4 and a 3. That's 7. Plus 2 for this, 8, 9. Plus 2 for this, 10, 11. So I've got 11 points of damage. 10 and 11. So 11 points of damage. So obviously I've disrupted that industrial complex's ability to produce units. But not only that, now UK cannot rail anywhere from this complex because there's damage on it. Okay? In fact, if the United Kingdom bought down all of the damage except for one, that still renders this factory and this integrated railway inoperable. So UK, in order to rail from India, for in this example, would have to buy down all of the damage off of their factory before they could rail in their non-combat phase, okay? This is why it is my opinion, especially in BBR, that Japan, whenever they decide to bring the Allies into the war, whether it's J1, whether it's anywhere from J1 to J4, it is essential, I think, that Japan bombs this factory, okay? For a couple reasons. One, of course, it keeps India from producing units here, at least as many units. It also forces, it makes this potentially weaker for a potential Calcutta crush, and it also forces the United Kingdom to spend money here repairing the damaged facility as opposed to spending it in Europe, but also it cuts the railway. So now India cannot be a hub to support the Middle East nor to help to defend China. So those, that's kind of a brief snapshot, pretty detailed on the railway and the bombing raid for BBR, okay? So hope this helps, guys, and now you know.
And knowing is half the battle.
Gijoe!